Good morning, good afternoon, or as the case may be, good evening, and welcome to Distribution Strategies Tech Leader Panel on tools to help distributors maximize sales productivity. In some of the content that we've produced, we've spent a fair amount of focus on increasing effectiveness, on selling more. This is really more about how distributors can be more efficient at what they do, which will in turn lead to selling more. We will introduce our panelists in just a moment. I wanted to share a couple of things with you that are coming up. First is we're taking the AI conference on the road now. And so we have the AI Forum for Distributors, which is a one-day version of the AI conference, and it's going to be at the Georgia Tech Center August 12th this year. You can see the URL there, distributionstrategy.com/AI-forum-Atlanta, or you can scan the QR code. We'd love to see you there. There's also a version of the AI Forum that we're bringing to Birmingham, United Kingdom in October 15th in Birmingham, United Kingdom. There's a URL and there's also a QR code for you to scan. So definitely take advantage of those if they're in your geography. A brief word about the products from Distribution Strategy Group itself. We have the Distributor RX software suite with 3 products in it. The first is Customer Experience RX, where we're able to identify actionable customer feedback that will make for a better customer experience and therefore happier customers. Kind of a counterpart on the employee side, getting feedback from employees to make sure that you are creating a culture of engagement and retaining those best folks. Those are both survey mechanisms, and we're seeing just terrific results in those. And then finally, Demand RX allows us to estimate the size of a customer's wallet, how much they could be spending in total and by product line. And that applies to both customers and prospects. So if you're interested in any of those, definitely reach out, distribution.strategy.com/software. And now I would like to introduce our panelists, Kristen Tom from Whitecup and Tom Cowan from Conga.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for having us.
Hi, Kristen. Thanks for coming on the show. Tom, how are you today?
Good. How are you, Jonathan?
Counting blessings every day. We've got a rich discussion coming up here. Maybe if you could each spend about 30 seconds and talk about what your companies respectively do, I think that would provide a helpful context for our audience to know where you're coming from.
Sure, I can go first. Again, I'm Kristen Tom. I'm our Senior Vice President of Customer Experience at Whitecup. And at Whitecup, we provide a CRM for distributors that's built on a foundation of business intelligence, powered by workflow automation and native AI to take the plethora of data that we find in distributors' businesses and provide insights about what you need to care about from that data, drive action in your teams that leads to meaningful results. So margin improvement, revenue lift on existing accounts, and saving your team on admin work and reporting time so that they can spend more time selling.
Fantastic. Tom.
Thanks. So I'm Tom Cowan, I head of industry strategy at Conga, formerly Pros B2B. So Conga and Pros merged in February. We're excited to bring together our capabilities to the distribution industry, including the price optimization and management capabilities that Pros had, CPQ capabilities from both, so the ability to configure to take that pricing that's been recommended, and then CLM capabilities within Conga, so the ability to go and manage the contracts that govern the key price agreements that present a distributor's price across there. And along with that, document generation capabilities. So as a joint organization here, really focused across what we call the commerce chain, so the transacting of business across that presentation of pricing and contracts and quotes.
So individually, your companies have a large impact on sales productivity, sales efficiency. So let's get into that now. Chris, when we think about teams at distribution companies, They're supposed to be selling. They're supposed to be spending more time selling. In your experience, where are they actually spending most of their time instead?
Yeah, there's tons of studies out there on this, right? There's a recent Gartner survey. It says sales are spending 73 minutes per day logging activity, just logging activity, and that's if they have a traditional CRM system. Without that, the sales teams are spending 70% of their time sometimes not selling. And they're spending a lot of that time searching. They're searching for answers on customer history, they're searching for pricing information, product information. What did that email last month say that I need to remember about today? Asking for reports to be run for them from the ERP system. It's a lot of searching. So when you look at that 70% of their time not selling, that leaves about 12 hours a week that they are selling. And the challenge that we always like to put in front of distributors is how can you start increasing that? How can you marginally start increasing that? And how can you get to the point where you're doubling that? What would it mean for your business if you had 24 hours a week in front of customers in these actual selling conversations? And we're starting to see that happen in practice, a combination of workflow automation and AI tooling. We're starting to see giving 46% gains to time spent actively selling. So that's where we're headed, I think, on this journey as we talk about sales productivity of what that can actually look like for distributors.
Terrific. We're going to come back to that. Tom, at Conga, what are you seeing across your distribution customers that's reducing sales productivity? Where are the gaps? Are you seeing them sort of standard across distribution, or does it vary within different parts of distribution?
Yeah, absolutely. It does vary. The universal problem across all industries really right now is that sales reps are not spending enough time with customers. McKinsey did a study and they found that the top performing reps, and this is across all industries, are spending 20 to 25% more time in front of customers. They did a subsequent study focused on distribution, and the focus there was seven key items here. Some of those driven by AI, things like faster RFP response, ability to get better pricing and optimization and produce that quicker in their quotes. At Congo, we focus on that commerce chain, right? So when we look at quoting, right, and the complexity that we see in distribution as a whole, the size of the price list, the managing of that, the price lookup activity that Christian just referred to. Conga kind of picks up where the CRM leaves off, right, and enters into that commerce chain to transact business, and that's key there. When we look at the complexity of contracting there, so the payment terms, the shipment instructions that go into these, the service levels that need to be maintained. I spent a lot of time in life sciences distribution and think of the monumental task that was taken with COVID, right? And delivering those vaccines at specific temperatures to pharmacies in a certain number of days in an effort that had never been undertaken of that size, and all governed by contracts and pricing that put that forward. As we start to look within the segments of distribution, we look at industrial, electrical, the MRO spaces, right, of having and managing vast catalogs. So that's the challenge for the reps, getting that million SKUs into, a price quote that makes some sense to that, and using tools to go and make that process more efficient for them. As we look at the VAR spaces, the ability to custom and configure solutions, value-added solutions for customers, right? And using a tool set and templates that help to take that specific work for a specific customer, but make that more efficient in that process. And then finally, I look, typically at the specialty and niche distribution spaces. Some of the smaller distributors that may be on the phone today competing with the big guys. How do they have, with a lack of manpower, lack of systems that may be there operating today off a spreadsheet, how do they operate efficiently to go and bring these capabilities forward?
So if we think about the compression of time in the commerce chain, in the part that Conga serves, can you talk about what kind of a compression you're seeing with your CPQ offerings?
Yeah, certainly. So yeah, both CPQ as well as contracting, we look and track cycle times, typically 25 to 33% reduction that we're seeing there. And it's really a matter of defining that first cycle time from start to finish, whether it be creation of a quote, taking that through to signature, creation of a contract, looking at the entire process, quote to contract, bringing that together, so very easily we're producing again and again 25 to 33% savings there. It's a matter of looking at reporting and funnels, right, and identifying where those, leakages are, where are things taking more time than they should. Very easy to point typically to legal and say, things are sitting in legal, but maybe they're sitting on a customer desk waiting for signature. So understanding those and then figuring out those points in the process and tightening those up.
Kristen, you'd mentioned that with White Cup, you're seeing a nearly 50% increase in the amount of selling time. Did I hear that correctly?
We're starting to see that, yeah, with folks that are adopting automation and AI together into kind of day-to-day workflows.
Yeah. So I think the totality of this class of solutions delivered the way you are, if a rep on a good day where the customer schedule's lined up and the routes lined up, they get to do 4 face-to-face calls a day. This is clearly going beyond that 4 face-to-face calls a day, right?
Exactly. It's getting them out of the searching for answers and the admin work that can take up a lot of time. Uh, End of week, end of month reporting that they're doing to their managers. It's getting that off of their plates so that they are focusing on their customers and spending more time in those face-to-face interactions.
Yeah, it sounds like pulling together information across both of your parts of the commerce chain is the biggest time sink. Is that a fair? Digging for information in multiple systems to pull this together and
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think we see it at the beginning of the process. So all the information that needs to go into a quote, so the price, the configuration that needs to be there, the clauses that need to sit in a contract, right? So that's pulling together very typically until you have this type of streamlined process, that information. And then on the back end, right? So when the pricing is incorrect, when invoices are wrong, when rebates are being miscalculated, when prices need to be looked up because they're not handling, there's that whole gathering of information on the back end that we work on fixing.
Yeah. We see is that the information is there, right? The distributors have this information in their business, but it's really hard to get access to, and it's really hard to have signals that are telling you what you need to care about within that information. So on the CRM side, obviously help with better customer understanding, get that 360 view of what's going on with your customer, full history, trends, things like that. But very typical conversation I have with distributors is sales folks in distribution. They could have, sometimes hundreds of customers. They know their top 20 customers, top 50 customers, kind of like the back of their hand, right? They really do. These sales reps hold so much knowledge about these customers, and they know them really well. But many of those have a long tail in their territory, and as we have more, new folks coming into distribution and selling roles as well, they don't have that long history that some of these sales reps have had for 30 years. And so that's where technology and tooling can help, is both that long tail of customers for the seasoned reps and for helping new reps get onboarded faster. Again, using data as finding signals of who should I talk to today to be more effective. Again, not just my top 20 customers, the folks that I know really well, but who's in that long tail of folks I don't talk to that much, where opportunities are sitting there kind of waiting for us to go after. But it's harder to know that information without a tool helping serve up these actionable pieces of insight for you.
I noticed somebody had raised their hand. We do have a Q&A button, so if you have a specific question, don't hesitate to ask to use the Q&A button. Raising your hand is essentially asking to come onto the panel, but I think for this, what we're going to be doing is taking questions. So when we think about somebody looking to get a solution like Conga, maybe they're not sure what they're doing. Some of the functionality is new relative to what distributors have normally seen. Tom, how do you help them figure out what they should be looking for? What are the dimensions? How should they think about this class of solution that's at your part of the commerce chain?
Right. Yeah. So, at the very beginning of the process, we don't really want to be talking about our solutions really, but going through discovery with our customers and understanding what those problems are. So is revenue leaking or sales teams not productive or customers frustrated, right? Those underlying things and what's going on there. Our revenue is not growing because the price mechanism isn't there, right? So are those price increases that you're announcing each year and looking to bring to market just never being achieved? Are your rebate and promotions and pricing incentives just not there and being effective, right? Or you don't even know how they're working? Are you not capturing price on the product lines and customer segments that you should be? Where do you have power in your business model that you can try to exert to the marketplace? So is that being done? Are you just asking questions? Are your win rates getting better or worse, right? Is there competition that you're worried about? Are you always hitting the RFP send button at 11:50 at night and always feel like you're the last respondent to get that in? And then, or you want a wild goose chase constantly for data. So really understanding the problems, what is going on in that organization. One great example we have is ADI Global, $4.8 billion distributor of security and AV products, large product catalog. And we first spoke with them about really a customer problem. Their website was just too slow. And nowadays, customers are just, oriented towards, I go on Amazon, I have a price instantly, I can find what I want and deliver that. As we started to dive into that, that manifested into a pricing problem. That's where the real slowness was in their system. So I want to put 36 line items in that catalog, and it's just taking too long to find the price. Ultimately, it's technical in nature, speeds and feeds, the numbers that are produced. So 50 to 60,000 price calls per minute, coming back with sub 300 millisecond responses. But ultimately, it's a customer problem that we're fixing there for them, making it easier for the customer, giving them a better experience, and keeping them with ADI in this case.
That's a really key point. It's not just making ADI more efficient. You're actually giving the customer a better experience,
Right,
right?
exactly.
And Stu has been very visible in his pleasure at what's happened with pricing at ADI. So so Kristen, from your perspective, when somebody's looking at a new sales productivity tool, what are the first two or three questions that need to be answered before they should take a vendor seriously?
Sure, I'd be thinking about two questions and making sure you have really clear answers internally with your team on these, and then that your vendor is providing you with a very clear picture of how to get there. So the two questions for me would be, why would your sales team want to use this tool? And what clear business outcomes will this tool help you measure and improve upon? So, for the first question, why would your reps want to use this tool? Why would your sales team care about this tool and actually log into it, pick it up day after day? It's going to be, does it arm them as a tool to be more effective at selling? And, for sales teams, they're driven by money. So is it going to help them put more money in their pocket, be more effective at selling? If it's not, then you're looking at an operational or a managerial win and not a true sales productivity tool in my mind. And that's where a lot of the frustration will come in with tools like this, is they will be a lot of kind of promises of how things are going to be better in your organization and things are going to be so much more efficient, and that's kind of the layer you stop at, is this idea of efficiency or operational gains. But if you're not tying it back to why would my sales team actually want to use this tool? And again, they're going to be driven by money, so it better be helping them put more money in their pocket. If you can't answer that very clearly, I think you're going to be really frustrated with both the tool, the implementation, and how you see your overall adoption going forward. The second question is, again, what clear business outcomes is the tool going to help you measure and improve? It should be doing both for true sales productivity in my mind. So again, be specific. Is it more selling time, like we've talked a little bit about? Is it higher win rates, quicker quote to order, larger average deal size? Like, be specific about what you want to go after here. and make sure that the tool is helping you drive those specific outcomes. I think it has to be a very direct line from what the tool is giving you to action your team will actually take based on that information, and then the results that your individual team members are going to drive for themselves and help drive in your business. So, you know, recent folks that have started working with us, one of their goals was they wanted a 4 to 8% increase with their existing customers. That was one of their operational goals to help their growth for 2026. Another one, it was lead management. They really wanted to go after prospecting and lead processes much more aggressively than they had previously. And so they were looking at lead management and increasing the number of new customers brought on per sales rep. So be specific about what's going to move the needle for your business. And then specifically, again, how is that going to play out in actual usage with your sales team members?
So you want to make sure that your prospect is not just looking to check a box CRM, and that the what's in it for me as the rep is really clear, because a lot of the CRM initiatives have failed if the what's in it for me as a rep is unclear. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's exactly it. If your goal with your CRM is that your sales managers need each of your reps to log X number of activities every week, if that's your end goal with your CRM, your adoption is going to be in the gutter. It's going to be a painful experience for everybody. You got to flip that thinking a little bit to how the tool is actually helping your sales team sell more, because then they're actually going to use it. So flip that mentality a little bit. Some of the other wins that happen with CRM will come along for the ride there, but that can't be your main goal going into a project like that.
We have a question from our audience, which I'd like to take right now, from Michael. Michael's question is, can these sales tools predict what a customer should be buying and when? Right now, all the data that we look at is us being reactive.
Yeah, this is where AI can really help accelerate here, I think. And Tom, I'm sure you've got examples of this too, but this is a perfect use case of where AI can help. So, couple of ways that we look at that on our side. One is buying cycle insights, is understanding when your customers are expected to reorder based on their prior history. And again, this is what AI is good at right now, which is looking at a large set of historical data, finding patterns in that, and then pulling out the patterns that are interesting. So making sure you know when you expect those next orders to come in, and sometimes even more importantly, when you have a missed anticipated order as well. You have a change in that buying behavior. You definitely want to know about that as soon as possible. So great use case for AI there. Same thing with what these customers should be buying. Again, looking at large sets of data like your sales history that's sitting in your ERP today can be a great place to start, of understanding what customers are buying, using that to compare different customers. So like customers to like customers, these folks are purchasing these things and not these others. Gives you really clear action and really opens the door for good conversations there. I think they're great use cases for AI that are in practice today.
I'd like to add a little color to the question without revealing who Michael is. I can say that Michael is running a company focused on HVAC and maybe a lot on the control space as well, if I recall correctly. That buying pattern is different than an MRO buying pattern, right? It's often driven by jobs as opposed to we need so many fasteners or abrasives per month. How do the predictive things work in that world that's a little bit more driven by bid and service than, let's say, a traditional MRO?
Yeah, what we've seen on our side, and Tom, if you want to jump in here, I'll him up. But yeah, give you an option. But what we've seen on our side is, again, this is where distribution specific tooling can really help, is understanding how these businesses are a little bit different and where the nuances come in. And so when you're looking at something like HVAC, like you said, it's maintenance driven. A lot of it can be time driven based on time from last install, last service, things like that can be inputs into an insight there. It can also be cadences with contractors that you work with and things like that. We've worked with several folks on that type of insight. website. But it's changing the way that a very like traditional model might run to actually work for the cadence of your business. And that's where we see a lot of value of using these contextual AI tools that are built for a business like yours rather than a generic tool that might be off the shelf, or you have to kind of give some of that context yourself there.
Yeah, and I think from the Congress side, we look at a couple things there. So there you're talking about a competitive bid situation, right? Probably where you're going out to multiples there. And we can really help you with getting to the best price, right? That winning price based on what we've seen out there in the field. So, and what the competition has delivered and bring those price elements together to compete on that project. AI responds best to a lot of data. So, those HVAC buying patterns that are different require a little more thinking and work, right, than your typical, MRO situation, which you mentioned there. So really getting together, doing the proper data science work and figuring out, and that's what our team is really good at, how to make those models work, right? So what is that buying pattern? What should it be? When is that deviating from that? And when should we go and take action as a sales team? So
Huge.
getting the pricing right, but then understanding that behavior at a different level and driving that through science.
As we shift to thinking about turning on a customer in the areas in your respective areas, Tom, can you take us through what an implementation looks like at a distributor that you've been close to? What is the range of the timeline? What are some of the wrinkles that commonly occur? Help us understand how that plays out.
Sure. Example I'll give here is Gray Bar. So, electrical and industrial distributor, $12 billion, 2 million SKUs. So pretty hefty pricing responsibility here to do. Key rollout here, we're talking about 6 months or so. And typically on these projects, that's a pretty typical timeline. For them, it was replacing a legacy pricing system. We'll talk about why that was done, integrating the new pricing system, so the pros system to their systems, and then driving the field adoption out to 300 different branches for them. Data throughout, obviously important in all of these. As we're talking pricing, we're talking about getting the right metrics, the right attributes that are going to drive the pricing models there, and making sure that data is clean, right? So that's always a challenge that's there. But I like to point out that go live, right? Just turning that system on is not the key and the end goal here. It's really the start of the adoption. Race that needs to go on. And the reason they needed the pricing system in this case was 60 to 70% of their price guidance that was given to reps previously in their older system was being ignored. So they were overriding that pricing. So once we got that system turned on, it wasn't that it was great technology and everybody was going to use it, but we needed to have change management that was going to help there. And one of the things for Gray Bar that really helped was this idea of weekly price updates and the transmission of that out to the field. And these included the cost changes that were going on. So that pricing was always getting better and improved with those weekly price updates. It was understanding the customer and the competitor slant in towards that pricing. And as that started getting delivered and the reps started seeing that line item on their screen with all of that information around why that price was what it was, data-driven pricing, they started to see the adoption rates, right? And the bad activity, the two-thirds of price being ignored in the old system, getting overwhelmed. So there they had a 32% increase in adoption, right? So that behavior going away, but a 10% margin improvement also. So not only were they accepting the prices and believing them, but they in truth were better and more aggressive pricing that was being delivered out to the field.
That's extraordinary. Part of what I heard in there is that if there's a change to the process, that has to be anticipated and dealt with, that it's not merely a technology solution.
Correct. Yeah, and those challenges really can be there if you've already essentially failed with one like tool. I always laugh when I go out on the street and into a neighborhood and you see a Chinese restaurant goes out and then a new Chinese restaurant opens up there or a new dry cleaner opens up, right? So the same business has gone into the same place. So that's always the challenge, right? And doing something differently that time technology's better, but how do we make this work?
Kristen, from the CRM and analytics perspective, can you share a specific example where a distributor implemented a sales tool and they saw that measurable improvement in rep performance? What did they actually measure? What changed?
Sure. I've got a few significant pieces there. I'm just going to talk about one very specific one that's been a lot of fun, one of my favorites recently, which is a sales team went live with CRM, really got into the BI side of things, that business intelligence side. And they decided that they wanted to drive more AI adoption with their sales team. And so the way that they decided that they wanted to go about this, because they were having a little bit of unsuredness from their sales team on adopting some of these AI tools. So the way they started to go about this was a bottom 20. It was how they approached it. This is what they called the initiative, is bottom 20. And the sales reps started to see this as a nothing to lose approach, which ended up being really critical for them. So basically what they did is that they took the bottom 20 accounts for their top reps. So each of their top reps had a bottom 20 accounts. So these are ones with low overall spend. Some of them are declining sales, irregular kind of buying habits. They're kind of buying out of convenience, but not kind of core customers to this distributor. And they enrolled the bottom 20s for each of these top reps into a pretty simple sequence that had product suggestions tailored to those customers, put them into quick AI drafted emails, automatically sent these out to those bottom 20 accounts. It was maybe like 15 minutes effort to create this and then scale it across those main sales reps, those top sales reps. And again, the top sales reps were on board because it was nothing to lose, right? These were customers that were not really on their radar. They were buying here and there, but they weren't like strategic accounts for these customers, things like that. And so it wasn't turning into humongous sales overnight. This is not a magic button that, just instantly, skyrockets into the stratosphere. But they started getting these small wins with this bottom 20, like nothing to lose approach. So they would get in an order here or there and that type of thing. And those started to create a little bit of momentum and excitement. And so, again, it was putting money into the sales reps' pockets without them doing markedly anything different that they were doing today, and started to create a little bit of a flywheel internally for where else can we be using tools like this and processes like this across our book of business. So the leadership team in this case empowered their sales reps to use the tool in a way that was not threatening to the sales reps and kind of got their foot in the door with this is the power of workflow automation, AI, bringing these together. And again, in a way that was palatable to the sales reps because they saw it as nothing to lose. So I loved kind of seeing that growth, and I'm excited to see this next month how it's showing up for them. But the first couple months that they had running with this, again, they were starting to get some of these small orders in from these customers that they didn't expect, and so it ended up being just a net win for them overall.
Yeah, it's interesting when the marketing cost can be almost driven to zero, right? You mentioned 15 minutes to get all this going. These were customers that were not receiving attention or love, if you will. And as you start to focus your attention and your gaze at them, then you start getting these wins. And the tool really gave you the ability to do that very efficiently, right?
Mhm. Exactly. Yep.
And then, Tom, if we think about Conga, is there a scenario that is similar to Kristen's, where once you started to focus um, a customer on the tool, results started happening pretty quickly?
Yeah, and I love that one with the bottom 20. I'm gonna take that back to our organization. So
I thought it was genius. You're never going to get arguments, right? So.
and in particular that long tail, right? So it's how do you automate that? Um, yeah, I think we the example here we talk about is getting stakeholders involved, I think, in what we do and really getting that at the table. We like to joke again about legal there, but very important in a contract lifecycle management system, right? So making sure that they're at the table there, and understanding there. They have particular ways they want to work within that. So really making sure we're hearing that, right, and making sure everybody's voice. Conga's in a unique position. A lot of our projects have multiple stakeholders that we want to really work with there, and those are key there. We can be working with sales, with legal, with finance, customer service, right, making sure each of those stakeholders. One project where I think about where we focused in on price in particular, a metalworking distributor that we were working with, million SKUs, and their reps in some cases were actually quoting prices that were lower than what the customer requested. So in the chaos of pulling a quote together, they were, ignoring probably the most important piece of information as to what the customer was going to pay. So delivering the system and doing it in quick order with target pricing, floor pricing, stretch pricing, putting that in front of them. Again, data driven information put in front of them, quickly delivered, helped really turn things around. They went from a $4 million per month shortfall across their sales teams to $4 million in excess, right? So an $8 million improvement there into the pricing they were delivering, right? Because they weren't making these mistakes. They had more informed pricing. And if you think of that, that's the difference between reps missing their number, managers, VPs all missing their number, right? And exceeding their numbers and making club and everybody's happy and moving on.
That is a huge story. Tom, when you think about when adoption doesn't happen as you would like it to happen, what's usually driving that?
A lot of times it can be executive buy-ins, not there, I think. Making sure that things are being driven from top down, right? We look at the various stakeholders in here. Legal may not want to use this system, right? Because Microsoft Word and the way I use it works better. Really, the executive buy-in, I think, is one key that we look at, making sure that's there, making sure the metrics that were originally sold into and agreed upon, right, are being tracked throughout that process, I think is pretty key to getting that done.
It's interesting because I'm imagining that a lot of what you come into, particularly if it's greenfield, in terms of pricing, is a situation where you've got a lot of power in the hands of the reps. Um, Papas don't let your babies grow up to be cowgirls, like cowgirls and cowboy reps, right? And you're starting to centralize that. And so I think, does that relate to what you were mentioning about the executive buy-in?
Yeah, and starting to push that those systems, those recommendations need to be used. A lot of times customers would rather negotiate um, with internally with their manager than negotiate price with customer. So, it's an easier channel to get through. So, changing behaviors really to do that and say this is the expected behavior. Using those top reps sometimes is key there to doing that, right? So here's an example of doing this well, right? Finding those reps, those districts, those regions where we're getting better performance and usage of the tool and doing that and driving that through is key also.
Do you notice a scenario where there's the so-called early adopters within in a company, and then people notice them having success, and then it expands? Is that how it tends to work?
It can, they can notice it, but ideally you're running a project, and I've seen this where you're promoting that activity, right? And you're really bringing that to light, right? It's not obvious that everybody's going to go see that, but you need to use that as an example of doing things well.
On the CRM analytics side, Kristen, what predicts good adoption versus bad adoption? How do things evolve over time? I'm imagining
Yeah.
part of it is part of it is generational. People with my hair color and quantity might be less likely to adopt a CRM. I'm closer to retirement than I am to entry level, right? Talk to us if you could about what drives adoption there.
Yeah, something Tom said earlier I think is very true, which is that your implementation, your go live with the product is the start of your adoption, not sort of the one and done, right? So thinking of your implementation and your go live as a one and done is usually where I see things fall apart really quickly. Those projects usually tend to try to do a large scale across the organization. Every single process needs to be updated to use the new technology and things like that. Those are great goals, but trying to do that all in one go is going to be a mess. And Tom, you just mentioned where there's internal process change that sometimes needs to happen going along with this tooling, and trying to take on too much of that at once will leave you kind of distracted and all over the place, and tends to not get a good like way to get started with a project. So where we see it go well is, again, you have your couple of items that we talked about earlier that are going to be actually impactful for your team. You have the what's in it for me for the end user that's very, very clear of why they're going to want to use this tool. And you use that as your starting point and then keep building from there. And Jonathan, you mentioned, like, do you sometimes see somebody, a small team of early adopters that take a win and start expanding that? And we do see that in the CRM and BI world a little bit, where you've got some folks that take on something, they really sink their teeth in and use that and keep expanding it. We have a sales rep that's using AI product suggestions for their customers, and she just challenged herself. She has these fed up for her for every single one of her customers of these AI product suggestions of what this customer should be selling. So she challenged herself as, I'm going to bring this up in every single order conversation I have and just see what happens. And so she just
Wow.
started trying it out for a month. And so her approach was like, hey, no pressure, here to help. So every single order, she said, this was her script she gave me. Hey, I notice you're not ordering X. Do you need those? And it was as simple as that. She said she just challenged herself to do it consistently and see what happened. And so she said her hit rate was about 50% of it sparking a good conversation, which was enough for her to be engaged with it and keep going on those. And in her first 2 months, she saw her average order size increase 6%. And so that was really impactful for her. And they used that. They said, okay, well, this is clearly working. She's got a formula here that's pretty simple to implement, pretty simple to do. And so they took that, and she then went to the inside sales team and was teaching the inside sales team, hey, here's exactly where I get these. Here's how I frame it. Just kind of teaching that really simple process and helping scale that across the inside team as well. So using somebody's success like that in a really small way and using it to start getting some excitement around the tooling can be an impactful way to keep moving.
I should note, by the way, within Distribution Strategy Group, despite my hair color, I am the most proactive user of our CRM tool. So just for the record. Um, I want to take a question now from Bob. So Bob runs a distributor manufacturer of wire in the electric distribution space. So Bob asks, in online pricing sales to drive sales, does the online pricing system first have an AI check for the web price prior to offering a price for other web prices from competitors? In other words, is it getting competitive information?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely. We can bring in those sources for that. Yeah.
how does it talk to us about how it kind of plays out? So you bring in competitor A is 5% under you, competitor B is 7% above you. What do you do with that? How do you integrate that?
Yeah, I think the first challenge is really, yeah, making sure we're looking at like for like, right? So
Yep.
that's the key there. So, getting that in, getting those what like for like are with your competitors. So matching that catalog is a key piece to that. But once that's there, then we can present that out to the salesperson as they are looking at that information. So they're seeing competitor prices and where that falls out versus where we want to look at a target or a floor price and seeing where that is fitting in terms of that recommendation.
So in that scenario, you're looking at web pricing, not quote pricing, right? You don't have access to that.
Correct.
Um, are you actually does the web pricing that you're scraping from elsewhere, does that affect the counsel you give on the price that the rep is going to quote, or do you leave it up to them to integrate that information?
You can do both ways. So you can either integrate it into your models and that's driving it through there, or you can present it just as information that they are going to consider.
Got it. That's been a relatively recent thing in the pricing world. For the longest time, the pricing systems and distribution were not gathering competitive pricing intelligence.
Right. Yeah, and the other part of the model that you mentioned, sometimes in the quote type model, sometimes you will get a competitor price and bring that in, but that's very sporadic in terms of being that able to bring that competitive information in, and not always as reliable. So if you have a meat comp price, for example, and you want to capture that and put that as data within the system and collect it, but challenge there typically is it's very sporadic in the data and is not timely, 3 months out from when it was originally collected.
When we think about the metrics that matter, so distributors sometimes, perhaps often, measure what's easy rather than what's meaningful. Um, from your perspective, Tom, what are the metrics that matter in the pricing world?
Yeah, I think we think of some key ones that we talked about here in terms of margin and revenue improvement.
Mhm.
First, some thoughts on kind of leading indicators that we look at. So we talked earlier about cycle time. I think that's extremely important. So as we track cycle times through the systems, um, and go and see again where those slowing is within that process and speeding that up. As we start to do that, and again, I talked about fixing the biggest problem first, moving on to the next, and then from there, as we start to do that, the reps are getting more time back. They're spending less time quotes, tracking down approvals that haven't been made, that have been sitting there, signatures that are sitting in somebody's email box, right? And capturing all those things, right? They're not doing those tasks anymore. You start to see a shift towards them being more proactive in their work, being able to be more strategic, work on the bigger deals, right? As the easier deals are getting automated through that process. So we start to see the work to change. Another leading indicator, I want to look at amendments, right? How many quotes and
Mhm.
contracts need to be amended over time, right? Indicator of sometimes business is changing, but very often there was a mistake made in that contract, right? And that's got to be corrected.
Hmm.
So that again is slowing the process. From the pricing side, we saw another leading indicator in two of the cases I talked about today. So, you know, quoting a price that's lower than what the customer wanted, rejecting two-thirds of the time in terms of pricing guidance that was provided out there. So those are key things, right, as leading indicators. Ultimately, we want to look, from a revenue and margin drive here, right? Are we getting more products in that shopping cart, more prices quote, right? So is our cross-sell and upsell increasing? Are we getting better price realization? Are we closer to target than we were before? Right? So is improvement happening on that, right? And as we establish floor target stretch goals there, we can do those comparatives in terms of our pricing metrics that are coming through, right? And that ultimately is what is driving margin. But prior to fully seeing that, we're going to see some of the activity I talked about in the leading indicators.
Um, Kristen, from the CRM standpoint, what are the metrics that matter?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to what we talked about at the very top of this call, which is that time selling, right? How much time can your team actually spend in front of customers selling? I think that is going to be the critical one going forward of how to maximize that as much as possible. And then within that, how can they be most effective in those conversations with customers? So tracking metrics that answer that question. So things, again, average order size, um, cycle length for large opportunities and things like that. How can we move those forward more effectively? Expanding footprint with existing customers. Are we selling new product lines into them? Um, Again, lead management is becoming forefront for a lot of the distributors that I'm chatting with, of just going after new customer prospecting and lead management in a more operationalized way than they have before. So what does that look like when we get a lead? How can we get them into sequences to get them moved to prospect and then customer status, and looking at some of those stats as well. So again, I would always tie it back to the main metrics that you run your business business off of, frankly. So, are you increasing margin? Are you driving revenue? How are these tools helping those big picture goals for your business?
Yeah, and I think as we get more efficient in the commerce chain, right, in doing these things, we'll start to see some of those metrics show up in the work that Kristen does, right? So, and that key one that we talked about at the very beginning, how much time spent in front of customers.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a really, really rich discussion on different parts of the sales cycle and the commerce chain. I think you've both contributed really significantly here. I want to shift to some things that are upcoming at Distribution Strategy Group, and then we will close out. So thank you, Kristen, and thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so tomorrow, we got a two for this week. We have AI News and Gurus with our own Brian Hopkins and Brooks Hamilton, who are the hosts of the show. And we have two really, really terrific industry guests, Scott Wagner, who's Director of Industry Transformation at NAED. I know personally they are doing a ton with AI and helping their members get going with that. And then Aaron Sheehan, the VP of Strategy and Commerce at Oro Commerce. So that's tomorrow at 9 Pacific, noon Eastern, sponsored by Oro Commerce. And then a week from today, we have the first ever AI Top 25 in distribution. We'll be tracking this every year. This is the inaugural list, and Brian Hopkins, Ian Heller, and I will be sharing on that. We've got three sponsors for that, including HawkSearch, Infor, and Proton.ai. So definitely look for that. And thank you again to Kristen and Tom for such a great session today. And we'll see you all on a future panel.